Hi, everyone. I'm Jolly, host of the Jolly Abraham Show. And today we are starting a series called Freedom Fighters. What is a freedom fighter, you may ask? Well, a freedom fighter is a person who takes part in a violent struggle in order to overthrow their government and win their freedom. Now, you may be thinking of freedom fighters like Martin Luther King, Mahatma Ghandi, and they are absolutely straight up freedom fighters. They've fought racial wars, political wars, and they have won. But over the course of this series, I am highlighting brave, resilient, courageous women who have indeed been a part of a violent struggle, not necessarily blood, guts, fists, right? But some actually physical, but many emotional, mental, and spiritual struggles against something, whether it's internal or outside, and they have indeed been victorious and are now living free. My first guest is the Honorable Freedom Fighter, Dr. Sher Mathew. Dr. Mathew is a native Texan and resides in Washington, D.C. She is currently a registered pharmacist and healthcare provider in the D.C. area. After obtaining her doctorate in pharmacy, Dr. Sher has traveled to more than 81 countries, including Mexico, South America, Central America, the Amazon, India, and even as far as China and Africa. And she does this to globally provide and aid medical assistance as a missionary with a focus on orphan care. She is also an influencer, philanthropist, fashion, and print model. She was involved in runway shows for many charitable causes, as well as Couture New York Fashion Week. If that's not enough, Dr. Sher is also a cancer survivor. After fighting her own personal battle with cancer, she shares the desire and vision to help raise awareness and support to find cures with those fighting cancer themselves. She's, in addition to the charitable involvement, she also fights domestic violence and homelessness. Dr. Sher dedicates her life to serve others and is passionate about doing so for the greater good of mankind.
Hello.
Dr. Sher, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me. And, it's really awesome that you're giving people an outlet through shows like these to share their experiences. So I'm grateful. I'm humbled, definitely, to be on your show, Jolly.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, Sherry, I was just talking to the audience about a freedom fighter. So, a freedom fighter is a person who takes part in a violent struggle in order to overthrow their government and win their freedom. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a violent struggle physically, Sherry, but they have been through a struggle, whether it is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And what I'd like to do is I'd love to just kind of go through your story, go through your journey, maybe how you were raised, the struggles that you've been through. And let's talk about how you became the fierce, bold, resilient woman that you are today, standing as a freedom fighter and living that abundant life. So let's get started. I want to ask you, Sher, how did you grow up? Like, what were some of the things that you were taught growing up by your family, the beliefs and values that you hold dear?
Well, let me start by saying that I do want to preference that these everything I'm expressing in this talk is solely my opinion based on my personal life experience. So, others might have a different life experience, but I just want to say that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so I did grow up with pretty humble beginnings. I am part of that first generation American-born group of children from immigrant parents coming from southern India, and basically they come here. What most immigrant parents come here to look for is a better opportunity, and moving from an entire foreign land, uprooting their entire lives, and working hard, finding opportunities to work hard to find a better life for them, their families, and their community, of course. So I grew up not only understanding that and knowing that, but we weren't just Indian, but my dad just drilled into my head that we were Assyrian Christian Indian, which is a hyper focused, super hyper focused community on Jesus and the church and preaching the gospel and mission work and orphan care. My dad was in the field, and even though I didn't understand quite what that meant or how, what an Assyrian Christian Indian was, all I knew was Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I mean, that was that was ingrained in everything we did. And pretty soon my dad met or was pretty much mentored by the late Pastor John Osteen, John and Dodie Osteen. And I was born and raised under that ministry.
Wow.
So yeah, most all of my life since birth was under that ministry. So you can imagine that just that's all I knew. But there was a great divide, though, because here I was basically had two Christian cultures. Not only two cultures in the United States, but I felt like I really had two different Christian cultures.
How so?
There was this divide with this ultra Indian Pentecostal Christianity with the speaking in tongues, and plus this is very important, an extreme patriarchal version of life, where on one hand I saw women had to sit separately from men and cover their head, and I hate to say this, I know that my dad is a good man, but I was told that I was the weaker sex, or the weaker gender. And so that was drilled into my brain that man is the head of the household, and we were here basically to serve. We stayed in the kitchen, and that was the mentality. And on the other hand, majority of my upbringing was at Lakewood Church, which is an American church. And I had witnessed a whole other way of life where women are actually being praised and uplifted and basically being served like princesses. So I think this confusion is what always got me in trouble. Because I questioned everything.
You questioned everything. Okay.
Yeah, I questioned everything. I questioned everyone, and just I may have been perceived, God rest my mom's soul, but I think she perceived me as pretty much rebellious. But I was never trying to be rebellious. I think I was just trying to be myself, even at a young age. And I sought, there was something inside me that always sought to be my most authentic self. And I just couldn't be that way. I felt like, all the transformation you're seeing right now and the continuing transformation is actually part of a late bloom.
Amen.
A late bloom, and those cultural experiences as a woman, knowing my place as a woman, was always there, kind of crunching me and crunching who I was. But things I couldn't hide were kind of seeping out, and despite all those cultural boundaries that were trying to keep me in that bubble, like in arranged marriages, or which I took a crack at 16 times, didn't work out, I failed. Probably because I was like this. Yeah, that's a whole different podcast.
Sure.
I mean, don't talk to boys. And my mom was always like, only shake hand and do the side hug. I mean, I guess to be honest, I felt like an oddball. I really did. We'd have a lot of, I don't mean any disrespect to our culture, but we have a lot of conferences and a lot of community events, because community is very important in our culture. But I always felt like there wasn't a sense of inclusion.
Wow.
For people like me, and I've always felt like I was being choked out. And even when I try to get involved, I sincerely I actually love our Indian culture, to where sometimes I wish I was born in India, because I felt like I missed out. But my path is my path, and I'm grateful. And I just felt like, even twice, growing up, I loved to sing, and eventually I got into vocal coaching and vocal training classes, and I remember a couple times when I would go to a Pentecostal conference, and we didn't cover our head at Lakewood Church, and my dad and mom were okay with that. My mom was kind of like, on the fence about it, but I was kicked off the stage trying to do praise and worship
Wow.
of this type of
At a
cultural conference.
Pentecostal church?
At the Pentecostal church in Houston, and then at our major Pentecostal conference in front of thousands of people.
Wow.
I went up to the stage, and an uncle just dragged me off the stage. I mean, I know I probably embarrassed my family. I think I embarrassed my family on a lot of occasions, but like I said, I was always curious. I always wanted to try new things, meet new people. I mean, I had this sense of adventure all my life. And I recognized that I just kept fighting that. I was wrestling that. It was a constant wrestle as a kid. Just being, I guess, what people would term weird. But I'll tell you honestly, Jolly, if you live your authentic self, or you had that desire, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
And I began to actually kind of secretly kind of embrace that weird or uniqueness. And I kind of like my brand of weird. I just couldn't be too loud with it.
Sorry, say that again.
I just couldn't be too loud. I couldn't express that too loudly.
Yes.
Even though I kind of secretly, I was torn, but I kind of like my brand of crazy, or whatever, however you want to put it.
Sure. How did you give rise to your authentic self, would you say, as a young girl? So I hear, when you talk, I hear you saying, yes, you were torn between two diverse different cultures. I actually didn't know that you were raised in the Lakewood Church. I assumed, because that everybody was raised in the Indian church, being first generation born and raised. So I didn't know you were at Lakewood. But first of all, I love that you realized that, hey, I am different. You could sense that at a young age, and I'm not being that authentic self is not being able to be expressed. So
Right.
what ways as a child were you able to express your authenticity, if any, or would you say it was squashed?
Well, I think, and I know, I say I think, but I know that growing up under the Osteen family and under their ministry was actually my out. My parents tried so hard to introduce me to our cultural, whether it was everything about our culture, whether it was religion or spirituality, and the church, which that was our central way of linking us, I guess, to our cultural beliefs, values, and the way we do things. But that being so involved with Lakewood Church under John Osteen and Dodie's ministry was actually my out, because I was, my dream as a child was always to be a world changer. Amen. And so they very much cultivated that when you were, in Sunday school and from birth. I feel like I always wanted to use my talent. It's such a blessing to be under that ministry, especially from birth. I always wanted to use my life to make somebody else's life even better. And I would get involved with their music ministry, and nobody drugged me off the stage there, So I just could sing and do praise and worship freely. And, at one point in time, my goal was to be a full-time praise and worship leader.
Wow.
And later on a missionary, because I witnessed that. Pastor John Osteen was a missionary to our country, to India, and he loved India so much that from what I recall, before he passed away, he actually wanted to be buried in India. You know, they
Wow.
couldn't make it happen, but he just, and that's how my dad became so involved, because he essentially sponsored, mentored my father, and you know, helped him out, helped him and one of my mom's, it's either my mom's brother or an uncle through my mom's side, here in America. That's why we're here in America, because this family cared so much. One of the reasons why we're here, cared so much to have that support system before I was born. And
Sorry, I didn't know that, but Joel Osteen's father, Pastor John Osteen, he
yeah,
sponsored your dad to come to America. That's so beautiful.
yeah, I really supported him, and my dad was staying at their house at one point. This was a long time ago, of course,
Sure.
and you know, my dad even wore the oldest Pastor Paul's clothing, hand-me-downs. I mean, it was like, but you know,
Cool.
Lakewood Church was a different world back then. You know,
Sure.
we're talking about, they were a bunch of trailer homes. I do remember those trailer homes.
Sherry, I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned that you wish almost that you were raised in India. Can you speak to that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Well, I would be, you know, like I said, I feel so out of place at times at these conferences, and I was still my extroverted self, and I would still love people, and I'd still get to know people, and I got to know a lot of great people, you know, but it always, you know, seemed like I couldn't quite blend. You
Oh,
know, it's later on I realized that, you know, I was meant to blend. And I don't think
hey,
any of us really were, if you really want to live your authentic self. So I just always had this feeling that maybe if I was born there, I would have born and raised there, and then came to America later, you know, I would have a lot more connection to that, you know, and to things about our culture, like uh, you know, I don't know, everything from the clothing to dancing to whatever, and even the music. You know, I love to sing, and I even hired out a guru in Texas who was a vocalist type of guru. Maybe I'm
sure.
titling him wrong, because I paid him to teach me how to even learn our vocalization, because of course our type of music is so different. Our vocalization is a lot different than the Western modality. So you know, so that's what I mean. I felt like maybe I could have like embraced it, because I love our culture. I love the colors. I love the food. I love everything about it. I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, maybe I could have had a little bit better edge or better chance of kind of like embracing that.
Okay. Okay. And so, what were some of the dreams? Like, I know you said that you wanted to become a world changer at a young age. First of all, I think that's beautiful. And for you to know that at such a young age, I think it's just fantastic. And you definitely are one. But like, what were the dreams and desires that you had as a young girl? And would you say in the Indian community, how was that treated? Did you voice it? Did you tell your family of your dreams, and how was it handled?
I think because my dad came from missions background, and a lot of my uncles were pastors. Not it kind of it was flush with the John Osteen and the Osteen ministry of Lakewood Church. They were a very missions based, internationally missions based church at that time, and I was I was definitely able to express that, because they were happy when I was there. When I was there, I believe our community, my family had the hope, you know, of, oh, she's gonna be okay. She's a little weird, but she's gonna be all right, because she loved Jesus, and that was, there was no doubt. It don't matter what happened to me in my life, but there was no doubt that I love the Lord. I
Wow.
love God. You know, it's like I can't live life without my relationship with God, no matter what has happened to me, or all along my path, you know. So I was able to express that, but they wanted me to be that, encourage that in this box, you know,
Wow.
that community, you know, my cultural or heritage, ethnic background community wanted me to express that. They love that part. But here I was at Lakewood, and I would, that was really where I could physically do the work, physically do the work. I volunteered for Sunday school without anyone resisting. As a teacher, as a youth leader, praise and worship, I did everything I could, like everything and everything. Prayer partner, I served on mission teams at Lakewood Church to Mexico. I served on Houston disaster relief programs. We did a lot. We were one of the biggest churches. I think they are still the biggest church in Texas, in the Texas area, Houston area at least. And we were involved in a lot of charity work and helping the whole community of Houston. And so I got a chance to be involved. Here's the thing. I got a chance to be involved with that without any prejudice.
Wow.
But I felt like I couldn't, without someone trying to put a covering over my head on the other side, or say, hey, you can't cross this because you're a woman.
Wow.
You can't cross the line because you're a woman.
Yeah.
But I freely expressed my love for the Lord and what I wanted to do as far as volunteering, singing, whatever, at Lakewood Church. And so I really believe that foundation right there of freedom of someone, and it wasn't a freedom where I took advantage of. I actually leveraged my freedom that I learned in that type of situation for good. Even as a college student, the University of Texas, University of Houston, and Texas Southern University, I preached, I held Bible studies, I did street ministry, but that was all inspired by the things that the Lakewood Church ministry taught me, that I didn't matter if I was a woman, didn't matter if I was young, I can do all things through Christ. I mean, I lived that because we fueled that.
Wow.
I wish we could fuel our kids, no matter what culture you are, just from a young age, like I was, that type of passion and that possibility. And, my soul sister, my first girlfriend in my entire life I met was Adele Hartland. And we would be so radical and extreme where at a young age, we would go on the street of Montrose. And I don't mean the bougie Montrose we have today. Montrose back in the day, we would go help prostitutes, and it would be after midnight. It would be probably one of the most dangerous areas in Houston. And I served to the point where the pastor had to ask me to leave and not serve anymore because I was being harassed by men and things were happening out there that just weren't very safe. But I knew at a young age that philanthropy I was devoted to philanthropy. It was in my heart. It was the fabric of me. And that is what it was in my blood. It is still in my blood. And as a child, I knew that. I saw that. I saw that role modeled, but I saw it role modeled as a possibility in the situation where I could serve. I was able to serve, through the ministry at Lakewood Church and through other ministries that they branched out in, through like homeless ministry. And I realized the power of giving, and that giving was healing. All those things that I fell short on one side, I'm not discrediting my upbringing or the Indian church. I'm not, they are humble, beautiful. We are humble, beautiful people. And that church set up, they know what they know, but through the years they've changed, right? And they've transformed as well. But, I knew the power of giving that will bring healing in those places where I felt hurt and I felt broken and damaged by that, and it's scriptural. It says, give and it shall be given unto you. And we'll touch on that a little later, we'll revisit that, but there's truth in that. And I knew that as a child, and I wanted my life to be a huge avenue to where, or I wanted to accept those paths and those opportunities to be that giver in any way of my life, whether it's serving prostitutes or gang members or orphans or whatnot.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful that you, in one sense, in one part of the culture that you grew up, you didn't necessarily get all the things that you needed. You were kind of put in a box, but yet radically different at the same time. You saw where women were advanced and praised and nurtured and pushed into their greatness. I'm so glad that you were able to actually get both. One is who you are. One is how you were raised. It's your culture. You can't change that. But then you were also given this beautiful opportunity to see quite the opposite. And you held on to that. You held on to what you saw. It was embedded in you at a young age. And that's what you kind of held on to and took with you as you grew up, right? On how to be, how you wanted to live your life.
Right. They got to get those golden nuggets.
Yeah. And there's golden nuggets in both places, right?
Yes,
both are beautiful and both have their issues, right? Both areas.
Absolutely. There's got to be a balance.
Yeah.
You're right. There's got to be learning that balance is a little tricky, but you've got to find the balance.
Yeah. And find the good things in both and leave the bad in both. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm by no means don't want to make this conversation a bashing, because that's not what it is. This is my life experience, and this is how I came onto the trajectory that I am today, and the woman that I am today. So all of that made me who I am, right?
Absolutely. And then Sherry, let's talk about how it was. So, you are now like in college. I'm sure you're thinking about boys. I'm sure with Indian culture, they're talking about marriage. Talk to me about that scene in your life.
Goodness, girl. Oh my goodness. Well, I grew up, even though I grew up at Lakewood, I actually, believe it or not, I actually accepted the arranged marriage setup.
Okay.
I never dated anybody.
Shocking.
I never dated. Yeah, I never. And I, even though, okay, let's go back a little bit. I actually had, I was not fit or health conscious back then. I was happy, but I was overweight. I was obese at one point at the beginning of my life, right? And I know that you specialize in this. This is your special, especially in the healthcare field, and so you understand folks, that go through this. And I went through a physical body transformation as well. So I wasn't exactly, on the market, because no one looked at me. So
okay.
I was I hate to say this, and I don't want to shame anyone, but back then, before all PC, culture, I was seen as the fat girl that was sweet and nice, but not dateable. Wow. But at the same time, though, I think this whole thing in my brain where I knew I was, or at one point I thought I knew I was going to have an arranged marriage anyway, so I'm not going to date. So I didn't date, and I actually, I don't remember if it was 16 or 17, might be 18, I can't remember, but I actually started the process. My parents already started looking for people. So
wait, at what age?
I want to say it was 16, 17, or 18, but it was like the preliminaries.
I think you were in high school when you started preliminary looking?
Maybe it was 18. Maybe it was 18, because I just remember when I was young. It might not have been 16. I remember when I was young, because I have an older sister, and they started looking for her.
Okay.
And they basically had, kept me on the radar. And I just remember conversations. I would hear the little whispers of, maybe we could save this one for her if it didn't match up. So how they do. They're looking at all the girls in the family.
Right. They don't want to waste time. They want to be efficient. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So pictures were going back and forth. So I never dated in college. In fact, I was so steep on this path to ministry that in college, like I said, I was doing Bible studies. I was doing street ministry on 6th Street, for goodness sake. Well, there was a street called 6th Street actually in Austin when I went to University of Texas in Austin, and basically, it's kind of a rowdy street, middle of the night, and back in the day, there used to be, just an opportunity for me. I held a Bible study, and I would take random people. I was so like excited about sharing Jesus. I would just take random people out who've never even shared the gospel or preached the gospel out there to the street. And the middle of the night could get a little shady and dangerous. But, I would take these folks out there. And one day we were praying and witnessing to people that were basically in a gang. And it was dark, like it was getting night. And they started surrounding us. And one guy actually flipped his switchblade, a knife out, and I could sense everyone was getting scared. So I just grabbed everybody's hand and we huddled in a circle, and we just started praying. We closed our eyes and started praying. And eventually we opened our eyes, because I knew at that point either we're going to get stabbed. We need you, Jesus. We're about to go down here. So basically, we opened our eyes eventually, and there was one guy left, and he was weeping full of tears.
Wow.
And he stayed, and he basically accepted Jesus Christ right on that street. Everyone else just disappeared. Everyone else was gone. But it's when we're obedient, I'm not telling everybody to go jump into gangs, or where people are doing these kind of things, can be quite risky. And I've taken quite a few risks in my lifetime, in my short lifetime. But at the same time, though, when you're going through challenges, or you're going through hurdles, or you're going through an unfamiliar place, sometimes we just have to trust God, and knowing in my heart, knowing that there will be a life touched. There will be one life, or someone's life will be touched. And sometimes that does mean taking risks, and like I said, I would never ask somebody to do some of the things I did, and my girlfriend, my soul sister, Adele, and I have done things like this, like street ministry, and we've even gone, our first official mission trip was in China, where, without saying too much, we were helping a pastor, helping children or helping people in China. But at that time, he was also involved with helping ex-Chinese mafia members come out of that.
I'm sorry, who is he?
He was a pastor in China.
Okay.
And we had gone on a random mission trip. Back then I had this blind faith to where, we have blind faith all the time. That's what faith is, and well, faith in some sense, is the substance of things. I don't want to botch up the scripture, but it's believing in the unseen, right? The unseen, and that could mean goals, and things you want to do in your life. And we worked with this pastor, and I had no clue until we got out there. He was working with ex-Chinese mafia members. He was, like I said, without saying too much, helping them get out of that way of life into a better way of life. And we, as two females, were involved with that. I put myself in kind of risky situations. But I said all that to basically say that I had a passion just to change the world, and that those college experiences were part of that, and fueled that. And I might have not been the smartest tool in the shed.
You're pretty smart, Sherry. You're a pharmacist.
I know, girl, but I had a learning disability back then, and I had to read and keep getting myself just fighting that part of me. And I think it came with having parents that weren't English, that English was not their first language. They were working 2-3 jobs a piece, trying to put food on the table. They were great parents, but some of the things like reading, I will admit, were tough for me. And I think it's, as a young age, basically didn't do things like read, where some parents were reading to their kids when they were young. My parents were working graveyard shifts, and sometimes you don't develop some of those the neural pathways in the brain. So I actually struggled in college, but I was happy. I was so happy, I mean, like I said, changing the world, doing the work of God, what I knew back then, was my goal. That's where I was headed.
Sure.
That was my path, even through all the struggles.
Sure. So fast forward, you're a pharmacist, you went to pharmacy school, and then you get married. How was that? How did marriage change you? What are the things that you went through, if you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing with us, that helped form you? What struggles, challenges, hurdles did you go through?
Well, I mean, I guess if you got time for a couple hours, I mean, that's like Netflix series right there. My hurdle.
Sure.
I mean, even at a young age, I mean, being from a child from immigrant parents, especially back in the day, what was one of the biggest things was xenophobia and facing racism, of all kinds, and especially bullying. We didn't have much, and I was bullied in school, in grade school, for, I remember there was these older Caucasian neighbor boys that after school used to chase me with real bow and arrows, and they would basically try to threaten me, try to put me in fear, and tell me, Indians, go back to where you belong.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would run under this bush. I mean, it sounds like a weird, it sounds funny. It almost sounds unreal. I mean, that kids would do this, and they weren't just kids, they were much older than me. They were my neighbors. And, of course that comes from the parents. And I would hear this kind of stuff. They even called me, I won't say the word. It's such a horrible word, but I was even called a sand N-word,
Sure.
in school. And, it was like, I was already awkward. I was overweight. I was obese, and heavier than most of the kids my age. But on top of it, this type of bullying kept going on. But the crazy thing is, I know it's just being in the Word of God, being in the love of God protecting me and encapsulating me through all of that, and my consistent involvement in the church, in the Word of God, that kept me going. I mean, I knew the truth was, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. God is my refuge and my strength. These kind of things were just embedded in my heart, my soul, my mind. And, I never blamed God, no matter who did anything to me. I never blamed God. Even a little older, I know a lot of people don't know this, but after 9/11, we, I guess people of our shade, doesn't even, people of our shade of color, if you're a little brown, or if you look Eastern, I would get, as a pharmacist, I would get people they would look at me, point to me and say, your family caused the war. I don't want her to touch my drugs or touch my medicine. And, I had an incident where, I was suffered a small bout or an incident of police brutality, where I was stopped in a small town in Texas, and with guns drawn, drug out of the truck. And basically, it was for another time to go into detail, but they jumped up and down and they said my race didn't count, and we got one. It was pretty horrible, and they threw me into prison. It was, I was so ashamed. It was like, basically, I had never drank before in my life. I still, to this day, I've never drank alcohol. Not that makes you good, and we'll go into that, the goodness of us, and I was a virgin. All the things that I surrounded myself with, what were making me okay through my struggles, all of that. And I felt like that type of violation, where these guys, these police officers,
almost stripped me. Who knows? Maybe I felt like they may have raped me. They took me to a dark place and just had their way. And eventually, you know, that settled itself out in the courts. Like I said, that's for another day. But, you know, even before marriage, I love Jesus so much. So I trusted people that did the Lord's work. And because we did missions, we had so many missionaries come in and out of our home, and that I trusted and I looked up to, because that's what I wanted to do with my life. Right.
Sure.
And, I know this happens a lot, but a couple of those missionaries took advantage of me when my parents were working so hard. They inappropriately touched me, and at a young age I was sexually abused. Wow. By these priests and these pastors, and I was just left me in confusion. I mean, it's like one after the other.
Yeah.
Things were happening, and I that was a couple of years actually when I was young. So one day I remember I had enough, and as he tried, this person was a close friend of the family, and he tried to do whatever disgusting, vile act he was about to do. I took my fist, I punched him in the face.
Wow. Are you serious?
I punched him hard. Yes. I was alone in the house, and I must have been 10 years old. And I remember something inside me was like, not today. You're going to do this to me today.
You didn't mess with the wrong girl.
Look at this cup.
You're
so
silly.
Basically, I mean, not to make light of the situation, but I remember punching him so hard in the face, and I ran to the bathroom. I locked myself in the bathroom. He tried to bust it open, and right then my parents and my uncles or family came walking in, and never again did he touch me. Wow. But also never again did I say anything. Like, I said nothing to no one.
Wow.
I mean, carrying that, I later on opened up, but to carry that with me was just, really hard, and just to feel that disgust, and to feel that shame, and to feel that, what did I do wrong? This is a consistent theme, from getting rejected for all these arranged marriages to this, to being bullied in school. There's like this, what am I doing wrong? So I constantly, even as a woman, tried to do the right thing. I tried so hard to do the right thing. Yes. And wow. I literally plunged myself into Jesus, and I worked at Lakewood. And I think to hide that shame, I went overboard in the ministry.
How so?
I put myself singing, praise and worship leader, mission works. I'm singing to the high heavens. We volunteered with Casey, my brother's wife's church. Her dad and mom are pastors, Pollards at Belmar Baptist. We created a band. We did conferences. I mean, it was, with Blessin, your husband, in fact, it was amazing that we did so much. I was at the top, girl. I felt like I was at the top of my game as far as being a Jesus freak. The good girl.
Right.
The good girl.
Yeah.
Top of my game. And, things in my life, I always loved God. I never blamed him. Some people turn away from God when these things happen, but I want to let them know, don't turn away when people fail you, because we'll always fail each other. We'll always fail each other, but don't turn away from your Creator, from God the Father, because he loves you, and don't give up. Amen. And, I just loved him more. And I, right at that point where I felt like I was at the top of my game, at that point, I didn't graduate college yet. I was getting my doctor of pharmacy, and I thought, now everybody's going to be happy. And now the community, now my mom's going to be so happy. I was at odds with my mom. I was at odds with her, because I think a lot of it was maybe we were alike. She was very bullheaded as well. You know, she tried to go to school. She tried to go to college, even though she knew she had a couple kids to raise, and you know, she never finished. And you know, I was more like her than not. I see now, even though, you know, I was at odds with her, you know, especially with the dating thing. You know, I wasn't, even though I was going to try to go through with the arranged marriage, you know, I wasn't really into it, I guess, but I thought that was the right thing to do. And I kind of felt like she was disappointed in me. But at the same time, though, you know, I had to be me, you know,
Yeah.
I had to be me.
That's right.
And right when I was at the top of my game, you know, I came home one day from, you know, had lived off near campus, and I came home as most college kids do, come home to do their laundry or whatever. And I came home, and at that time, one of my aunts had passed away from cancer, and my parents that morning were going to the funeral with my brother. And my mom, I remember her knocking at the door, wanting me to come, but I was working. I had a shift that morning. And I remember I didn't get up. I was just like, you know, mommy, just go, you know, I'll see you when you get back. And you know, I don't even know. I can't even remember if it was a few hours or 1 hour. So maybe it's 2 hours after the funeral was in Dallas. So they were driving from Houston to Dallas. And next thing you know, I get a phone call saying she's gone.
What?
And
Your mom.
yeah, I mean, some kind of accident happened, and she was gone. You know, it's like here's where these are important parts about our community. They might have their faults, you know, in one sense, but the entire Indian community, and including Dodie Osteen, she got on the phone with me, was there, you know, and they actually, you know, forgive me for getting a little emotional, but they actually went from this aunt's funeral to my mom's funeral, mom's, where she had died in that car accident, because it was kind of a halfway point from Houston to Dallas. And I got on the phone with one of my closest friends, Stan Epen, Sunni, you know, is what I call him. And I remember just talking to him, and he already knew. I mean, everybody else already knew, you know, I was asleep. And, you know, I felt like my world kind of stopped, you know. And one thing about being a strong person, I've always been seen as a strong person in my family, but, you know, it's like, I felt like I had to be so strong for the family, to where I suppressed that. I suppressed those emotions for about 10 years, probably a decade. But I plunged myself in trying to get, I just remember, you know, I can't remember much, because honestly, that point where my mom was killed was like a line between first half of life and second. And I plunged myself with working hard to finish school, working at the church. I think I lived at the church, you know, and doing mission work, doing everything I could just to be so close to God, to get through that, to forget that. I improved my relationship with food and fitness, which that in itself was a 15-year-long journey. And I know we butted heads, but I even till this day, you know, I hate to say this, I feel like I never measured up to her expectations. When we talk about expectations they put on women,
Right.
and I'm still not quite sure she left for heaven. I know she is with Jesus, but I kind of have always thought, you know, was she ever proud of me?
Hmm.
You know, and unfortunately, it's because of these pretty much made up expectations they put, you know, certain people or culture or whoever, you know, we meet along the way in life put on us, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, I always thought she believed me to be a failure, but I think now I look back, I think she just thought I was a big goofball. And and you know, I never blame God. Never blame God once again. just clung to him more. I clung on to him more because I really didn't understand what happened. I didn't even walk my graduation. My mom wanted me to graduate. She was the one that wanted to see me graduate so much more than I felt like anyone else in the family. My dad was very, he's one of these guys that he's like, just do your best. If you can do it, you can do it. Go ahead. But if not, just do your best. He doesn't make a fuss about things. He's a very simple man. But I felt like my mom wanted to see me walk that stage and get that doctoral. And if she couldn't, I wasn't going to walk.
Wow.
I instead of walking, did all that work, 9-10 years. I actually failed a course after she died, but the university just so they allowed me to take it again.
Wow.
And basically they did not suspend me. They said, hey, we're going to give you a bereavement. I mean, God always made a way. They even gave me a scholarship, to help with finances, because at that time I was working graveyard shift, trying to put myself through school, trying to go with that and the loans, and then trying to help my dad financially the best I could. And, God says, it's like, give it all that charity work, all that, whatever. I see it now. The Lord says, give and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. And I felt like my cup was still running over, even through all that sorrow.
Wow.
And I decided not to walk. I decided to go to Honduras and do a mission trip and serve. And like I said, I felt, and I always knew, when you're at your lowest point, serve and give. And then that love and healing will just come back to you in any capacity. You don't have to do mission work like I do, but I truly believe that. And that's what I did. I said, my mom's not going to be there. And that mission trip was the trip where I met the love of my life. So, that's where the marriage and domestic partnership comes in, and that was about a year after my mom passed in that car accident. And I was just so numb. And I felt like the Lord had opened up a healing avenue through him. I mean, we were two peas in a pod. I was actually on cloud 9. I always said when I won the lottery, how they say I won the lottery when it came to in-laws, because I had the best. Until this day, I'll always love them.
Oh.
There will always be my mom and dad. And, we travel the world together. He checked the boxes, talk about checking boxes. And we did. I prayed. I had a couple prayers and I wrote it down on a list. I said, I want the man to love the Lord. And it's a weird prayer. I want the partnership, the husband of my life, father to love me. And I want to do mission work beside that man. And those really were the main criteria in my life, so back then, and all of that we did together. We even gave scholarships to kids at one point when we were financially doing well. So we would give scholarship to kids in college, and it was like the vision. We had visions to build schools and hospitals in
Wow.
India and around the world. And we did travel around the world and we did mission work together. And pretty soon though, people change, and I think that is, that's something that we have to understand, and you don't know why people change. He eventually, life was incredible. Life was really incredible. I could really say I had such an exciting marriage, and he was full of compassion. I watched him just serve children in other countries, full of compassion. And, I think the world just kind of gets in the way, and without getting into the weeds with that, again, another story for another day. But, he eventually got a promotion, moved me to DC, and unexpectedly became abusive. And he wasn't like that. And that's not talking like as a victim mentality, that he wasn't like that. He he just became physically abusive. And, God knows people fight their own demons. And, no matter what, he eventually left me, and eventually no answered questions, without any answers, just left me. And I always say left me here to die. Basically, I had no friends. I didn't really know anyone. It was like an unexpected situation, but I never gave up on him. I wanted to make it work. I wanted to find him. I couldn't find him, but I mean, to this day, I really don't know what happened. So I just had to move forward. I had to pick it up. But one thing I learned that it's not only Christian people. In fact, Christian people were the least likely of people, or during this time of my life that went dark, that actually helped me. It was, DC, here in DC, this is a very, culture, you on the go. And most people here are not strong Christians. They're not strong Christians, but they're good people. I started, going to events and parties and galas just because I love being social. But I eventually started meeting people, because at that point, I was in a darkness.
Yeah.
It was like it was even worse than when my mom got killed, because my mom got killed in a car accident. Okay, that is an event that happened. There was some understanding to that event. It was an accident, but not knowing where he went, the love of my life, after almost a decade of friendship and close-knit friendship, we hardly argued. We had just a great friendship, and to not really have any answers, to not have a clue, it's like that type of darkness was a different darkness. It was the first time that I actually, and it was a passing thought, I actually felt like I couldn't live anymore.
Yeah.
But that went quick, because I was like, no, we're not going there. We're not going there. And I think that was my faith. I know that's my faith in Christ, that basically those thoughts will creep in, right? When we go through trauma, when things like devastation happens.
Yeah.
But I constantly put myself in the Word of God, and I never gave up. I remember nearing the end of my search, I was talking to a friend and several people here. I met lots of amazing people, like a guy named Matt. He was an attorney here, and he became like my brother, and his parents became, in the absence of my own father, who could not, our culture, they can't, sometimes you hear the word divorce and it's like, everybody scatters.
Right. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to handle it.
Nobody knows what to do. It's like a scarlet letter. And I was basically left alone, and I'm not, there were family members, like my brother, or like my cousin, my first cousins, some of my first cousins, Les and Sajin, people that were there. And definitely, I thank God they were there, but they were a handful compared to the rest of my family, because I feel like I was shut out, shunned, and I couldn't even I couldn't get it together anymore after this. It was like I couldn't get, my foot couldn't gain any ground. I lost my footing. I mean, it was like I was at a bar. I remember talking to a friend, and I don't drink, but I love going out. And I kept telling him, I said, he's like, why don't you let go? You're trying to look for this guy for 2 years. You don't even want to date. You don't even want to go out. I said, because I love him. Part of me will always love him. I don't love what he did. A person that, but I know something's going on, but that is now, I had to release that. I had to understand the power of detachment. I think in everything in life I was doing, and I had to detach from this. I said, I need closure.
Wow.
I remember telling him, I said, how am I going to get my closure? I need to talk to him. I want closure. I want to know what happened. And he said, no. He said, you need to stop and create your own closure.
Wow.
And I remember it was so profound because he said, that's enough. That is enough of chasing him and trying to find a person that doesn't even want to be found.
Praise God. That was the Lord. That was
Yeah. And it was again, it was a non-Christian. And that's where we as Christians, we as people need to be open. We need to be open to everyone that God uses or can use that crosses our path, I never blame God, but I just couldn't find God at that time. I really, but I was close. I knew he was there, but I did feel like it's the first time in my life I felt like, I couldn't find him and I couldn't find my way either, and one day I kind of snapped. I was like, what are you doing, Cher? What are you doing? Trying to find somebody that doesn't even want to be found.
wow. Yeah.
And I looked in the mirror and I was like, you're a missionary, girl. At that time, I even stopped my mission work. I was so hyper focused on just trying to find this person, trying to make it work out, trying to piece together all these broken things that I thought made me a good person.
Yeah.
Being in a marriage, being in a stable marriage, being in the mission work, being in the church.
Yeah.
Being a pharmacist, for goodness sakes, and it was like, I couldn't hold it together. You know how you try to put Jello or jelly in your hand, it's going to go through your fingers.
Yeah.
I felt like everything went through my fingers. And, I said, you know what? Do what you know. I took all my jewelry, rings, and I went and sold it. And I said, I'm going on this trip to Africa. My church was going to Ethiopia to go help children with HIV. And I told that jeweler, I said, give me the best cost. I'm going to give all this money to these kids. And he's like, what? I said, those rings, those diamonds, they represented love. So
Wow.
instead of stopping that love, why don't we continue it in a different direction?
Wow.
Take the trauma, right? Hear me out. And turn it around in a different direction for good. And I went to Ethiopia. I think that Ethiopia trip, those children, they did me more good. And I know a lot of people say this on mission trips, they healed me, they're loving them, hugging them, teaching them, just being with them, and just that started my path back to healing, back to, girl, I was doing everything. I went to Ethiopia. I went to Zambia. I went to Egypt. I mean, I was doing all kinds of charity work, helping the homeless. I mean, I got involved and my healing was coming. In fact, goodness gracious, girl, I got to a point with my fitness goals where this person, I look at myself that was overweight and obese. I actually qualified for New York Fashion Week runway as a runway model.
Wow, look at that.
In the couture.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that. I met great people, the Slattery family, Congressman Slattery, and they became my family. Jason and Gabby, their son and daughter-in-law, and my Jenny, my sweet Jenny, who is now, just battling cancer, and people like another soul sister, Coco. I started doing these things where I travel with my ex-husband. So basically that was something so important to me. I had this need. I always had this need to go to different countries every year and meet random people just to connect. I always say I'm nosy. I want to go see what my brothers and sisters are doing on the other side. And I lost my partner. I lost my person that I love to do that with me. So my girlfriend, Courtney, we call her Coco for short. I invited her one day, and we are now like this. We're such entwined soul sisters. And I would call them my healing trips. I'd go to a different island, and I still do this. I still practice this, just being grounded with the earth, being grounded with the beauty of God's nature. That is such healing and necessary to reset, especially after trauma. Yeah. And, and I mean, things were happening. I was being invited to dinner with the president of the United States and President Obama at that time, and Christmas parties at then Vice President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden's residence, their Christmas parties. It's like life opened up again. I mean, life opened up, and I was alone here, but yet I wasn't really alone. God provided the love of strangers, and unfortunately, I didn't always find that in the church. And like we were talking about, that sometimes Christian people don't know how to deal with divorce.
Yeah. I want to ask you, Sherry, what would you say that you cherished or prided yourself in, in your life, that God stripped from you, and that made you utterly broken? Was it this relationship? Was it your marriage? Or what would you say it was?
I think it was everything. We like to build, which is fine, build a foundation on goodness or the things that make us good, right? All our holiness. Oh my good Lord, I think with all that stuff that happened to me, the bullying, the sexual abuse, my mom getting killed, going to prison, and then all of a sudden losing the love of my life, and not only losing him, but to an end that ended abusively. All of that was, it's like, I thought I was so holy, and I realized it's a freaking ego and vanity in the end, and I feel like, I really believe, I heard this one, I started doing a lot of, after he left, I started doing a lot of healing. And then soon after that, we'll get into that, the big bottom drops when, the C word came into my life, and I basically had to say, I say relinquish, at this point in my life, relinquish the ego and try to transcend it. And I think that is something that they don't teach you. They don't teach you at a young age. And I don't discredit all these things that happened to me, all the traumas, that's your life, right? We all have our individual traumas, our individual paths, but, letting go of that, which I thought made me quote unquote good, those are the things that I cherish. I kept so close, and honestly, the sorrows, the losses, as well as the gains, are what brought me to right now. I mean, those bad decisions, those things that happened to me, eventually led me to all these epiphanies, and letting go of that nonsense of someone else's mental image of me and what I was supposed to be.
Wow. Yes.
Where there is community or your family. I mean, it's such a narrow perception, right?
Yeah.
It's such a narrow perception, and a useless narrow perception of what others need you to be. You need to be yourself. Yeah. You need to be who God made you, whether you're woman or man. I know your channel empowers women, but this goes for men as well. I mean, there's a lot of slaying of what do they call psychological demons along the way. You gotta, it's like a lifelong navigation to slay all these ways or ways of thinking that don't live in sync with who you are, that stop you from being your authentic self. They don't live in sync, and letting go of those is letting go of those things that I cherished. It is the hardest thing. I mean, I'm 46 years old and I'm still young, and it's like, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. It's
not done yet.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process, and being enough. One friend, one day, he's like, he couldn't figure out, he's like, I can't figure out what's your problem. You just keep giving and giving and giving. And he goes, one day it hit me, he said. He's like, you loved in that domestic partnership, you loved him so much that you were imbalanced and you didn't love yourself. And that's one thing that I realized. The church, they teach us to, and it's good that they teach us to be sacrificial. And as Christians, we give, and I'm a big giver. I love giving. Like I said before, giving, I believe, brings healing back to you. But the one thing he recognized was you need a little more self-compassion.
Wow. So
and
true.
Self-love.
Yeah.
And I never even heard of self-compassion. I've heard of compassion.
Self-love? What does that mean? Yeah.
I've always thought that was selfish.
Right.
It's not.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not. And, I don't think you can love someone truly, whether it's an orphan or a homeless person or your spouse or your partner or your family or your child.
Or even God.
Or even God. Yes. Even God, without a healthy relationship with yourself and embracing yourself, loving who you are. And I hope one day that we as the church will start teaching that as at a young age, and not in a narcissistic way. I know we have a very narcissistic world right now, but in a healthy way.
Yes.
And I hope one day, I haven't seen it yet, but that's what I learned through my journey. It's like cutting out foolishness, ways of thinking that I got to be X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the checking off the boxes. There ain't no boxes anymore, girl.
I love it. It's
There's
just
just life.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just a journey of amazing experiences, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. It's so true. I think you cannot, your friend said it right. You cannot actually give of yourself fully and deeply until you know yourself. And it's an ongoing thing to know yourself. We don't fully 100% know ourselves today, right?
It's an ongoing thing. You're right.
Yeah. God is continually revealing who he is and who we are. And,
absolutely. Yes. You hit it, girl. You hit it.
And,
yes.
Something God's been showing me, and I know he's showed you, is we actually cannot fully love God deeply until we love ourselves, right?
Yes.
We can't.
Yes.
It's not possible. We will half love God, and we're doing that out of a half loving ourselves, or just whatever we can. But when we love ourselves deeply, when we know ourselves, we can then know our God.
Yeah. I mean, after all, these desires when I was young, and these things that I guess other people I titled as or called weird.
Yeah.
Those are the unique qualities in us.
Yes. Yes.
Whether you want to be a pharmacist or a doctor or a surfer or or
DJ,
fashion DJ, anything. There's nothing wrong with that, and we need to stop doing this box checking business and stop putting ourselves in a box and putting that goodness. And like I said, I look now and it's all vanity. And I think that really came, into light when I was on the top. I was on the top of the world, back healing after that devastation of losing. Basically, it was like death, losing the person you love. And then I was coming home from Zambia, Africa, serving orphans. And I keep bringing up my soul sister, but she's so connected to me, Adele. She calls me, contacts me, and says she was in stage 4 cancer. Wow. And I just, I don't know what I do. I don't know. It was like this, my God, what is happening? And I go to see her, in Texas, and I come back to DC, and in my brain, I'm thinking, man, you've got good health insurance. I at that point, I felt like I was top of my game, even in fitness, to the point where I wouldn't go to the doctor because I just never had a reason. So I
Wow.
went, it was a routine, I just went because she had cancer. I got a little nervous. I was like, you ought to get checked, everything.
Sure.
Just check it, scan it. And I told that doctor, I remember saying, I said, I don't care what it costs. I said, scan it all, scan. And in the middle of that, it was a well woman exam. And they saw a polyp and they were like, okay, let's go into surgery. We don't know what it is, let's get rid of it. And I get, okay, that's fine. Polyp, whatever. And I remember I was in Texas. It was my brother and his wife were having their first biological child. The doctor, talk about miracles. Doctor said Casey would never have kids. And after they adopted their second daughter, Priya was the first, Hope was the second. Lo and behold, she gets pregnant. So here we are as a family, excited,
Yes.
top of the world. Like I said, I flew down. Joshua was coming, and I flew down that week. I was sure to take off, and I did this little polyp removal surgery the week or two before, and I get a phone call from my doctor while I was in Texas and asking me to come come into the office as soon as possible. And I said, no, you're going to tell, doctors don't like saying things over the phone.
Right.
I said, Doc, you're going to tell me what's wrong. I'm here in Texas. Tell me right now. And I remember him saying that wasn't a polyp. He said it was cancer.
Wow.
He said, he said, I had a hunch. He goes, I took parts of that tissue off and I had a hunch. He said, I sent it to the path lab because I don't know if something was wrong. His instinct told him to check. And I said, what kind of cancer, doc? I was in such denial. He said, this is malignant and you need to get to a cancer center immediately. He said,
oh my
God. He said, immediately. I said, what is happening? No, I mean, I was so lost, girl.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, what was wrong with me? Everything was going right.
Yeah.
And again,
you had that question. What did I do?
I said, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Lord, I was, again, the bullying, the abuse, going to prison, the domestic situation, losing love of my life. And I thought, God, I give up.
Yeah.
I said, something's trying to kill me. I actually thought, this horrible thought came into my brain. And once again, people will tell you all kinds of things. I had family members telling me that I did something wrong in my life and I wasn't pleasing God. And it's shame. Yes, I wasn't pleasing God and I was doing something wrong. And this is why I was being punished, I guess. And so basically I had to be alone. I came alone. I came back to DC. I 3 days did not eat or drink. I fasted and prayed on my face. I remember right in my bedroom there. I remember fasting and praying. And I said, God, I need answers.
Wow.
I need answers. And I mean, people were close to me were telling me, what was I doing wrong?
Wow.
I mean, I won't say who.
Yeah.
Somebody that was like my brother. I'm going to embarrass Wes. He's the one who's, but we've brought it up,
You reconciled.
We reconciled. Yes. I love my brother like my own flesh and blood. He's like my twin. And so Casey's wife says he's like the male version of me. So, I mean, but even like he would, people like that would wonder, what is wrong with this girl? And all these weird things were happening.
That's what people think. We don't blame them. That's where they are, right? And
right.
But it's hurtful. They are unaware. They don't know what they're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And I held that inside. I was like, God, and again, it goes back to what you were saying. What broke? All what inside the stuff that I cherished broke.
Wow.
And it's, again, we go back to that, everything we think is goodness, having a stable marriage and having this and that, and never drinking alcohol, never having sex before marriage. That's good and all. Those are good. Those are not bad things, right?
That's right.
We have to realize it does not make that's really not the core of us. That's not the core of who God made us in order for us to flourish and transcend into being the great person or our great selves, our most authentic selves. And I think cancer was probably, it was a humbling situation for me because I had control of everything, right? After I was left, after I had, been abused, it's almost like I was constantly trying to put those pieces together, make sure they wouldn't fall.
You were constantly, would this be safe to say, trying to perform, trying to still do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good way. That is a good way to put it. Trying to perform, trying to do. But I realized that you could do everything right. You could do everything right, but the bottom could still fall out because that's not where it is.
Yeah.
That's not where it's at. These things came like a wave. Even the doctor told me, 2 different doctors. One said I had 5 years left. One said I had 10 years left. And I was like, what's going on with me? It's like, this is all of that goodness I felt like was for nothing, and not that it was for nothing, but I felt that way. I felt like I had built this foundation, and I had a great foundation, as my parents laid, my pastors laid, the Osteen family, and those people that loved me along the way through all those traumas. But I had this personal foundation of goodness that just crumbled. My idea of goodness, let's just say that.
Yeah, that's right.
And then after that many tears and weeping, I came to a reckoning with myself. I said, you know what? If you're going to die, I said, God, if 5 years is all I got left, or 10 or whatever.
Right. Whatever the prognosis they gave you with the cancer.
Whatever the prognosis. I said, then so be it. Let's max out on those 5 years.
I love it.
I said, take me around the world, Lord. Let me serve as many orphans. Let me love as many people.
Wow.
I'm not going out of this world without maxing out on love. I mean, at that point, of course I wanted to live. I told those doctors, get me out of that. I remember I was in the middle of building that clinic, helping build that clinic for those orphans in Zambia. And I remember when I was going down on surgery, when they gave you the anesthetic, I think they wanted to just shut me up because I remember the nurse was like, you're okay. I said, you better get me out or I'm going to commission you. You need to go help those orphans if I go to heaven. Well, I was like laughing as I was going down into anesthesia. And I just letting go and needless to say, I'm here. Praise Jesus, I'm alive, for however many years.
Yes.
However many years. But I praise God for his mercy. It's only by his mercy and grace. I'm not different than anyone else. I didn't do, so many people pass from cancer or other diseases or other ways. I'm no different from anyone else. It is by his grace and mercy. And I'll always say that, and I'll always know that. And I basically came out, and I will tell you one thing. I'd never wish cancer on anyone. I would never wish cancer on anyone. But in a way, all of that experience with cancer, it healed me. It really healed the way I thought about myself and all the trauma and just all these ideas I had of what was good and what I had to do in order to be this great Christian woman. And I just had to be me. I had to be me, and that was all.
Yeah.
I think I think sometimes we put God in a box.
Yeah.
Where we limit. I mean, really, our God is so big, He's so big. I mean, the possibilities of who we are endless, and you're okay for being you. I mean, it's like I finally realized I was just surrounded by a lot of influential people, but some of those influences were influential assaults on my soul and, on my body.
Yeah.
And, in my spirit. And I really believe that, they took genetic testing, and I had no disease, no
Family history.
mutations, family history, no mutations. Even the aunt that had passed away from cancer, she wasn't blood related, she was by marriage.
Oh, okay.
And so basically, even the oncologist said, we see this a lot in women that have gone through a lot of trauma and abuse, and not even to put it on the domestic partnership situation, but everything in my life. She said, we really believe this is environmental. And I believe, and people don't like to say this, you know that book, The Body Keeps the Score?
Yes.
I know you know that book, The Body Keeps the Score. And I know that, not having that a good mental or spiritual hygiene as far as the taking care of that self-compassion, that self-love,
Yeah.
attributed to that these cancer cells. And I truly believe that. Again, like I said at the beginning, these are my opinions, my expressed opinions, personal opinions based on my experiences. But even an oncologist telling me that, she's a studied woman. I don't even know she's a Christian, but we never spoke. I spoke about God a lot, but even she, in all her knowledge, had to admit that or said that to me. All these, this includes taking out, we have to learn how to take out false thought processes, toxic thought process, toxic people that bring those false, and sometimes they can be your family. And you can love your family, but I always say, love them like this, love them at afar, the people that don't serve you. The people that don't serve you, love them, love them as Christ has commissioned us to love. But it doesn't mean you got to give up you just because these people or these elements, they feed that process of lies, I think, that continually lie to you about who you're supposed to be. Oh my Lord. Who are you supposed to be? I don't think because every day you learn who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like you said, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And I love the journey. I can even say now, I love the journey. I mean, I look at all the things that have happened to me, and I have like I said this before, the understanding of detaching from these things, the value of detachment, and people, people and ideas, and just getting over yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
I had to do a lot of getting over myself.
Wow. Yeah. Ego. We had to get over our ego and pride of how we think life should be, and who we think it should be, and where the goals and the timelines and the age at which we should achieve X, Y, and Z, right?
Exactly. Even this cancer took my ability to have children away. Wow. And I had for a long time, and that's for many years. I prayed. I did orphan care work, and I prayed for my own child, and I had these dreams and visions of having a husband and taking my child over, like my parents did, to India or to other countries, and teaching them and sowing those seeds for the next generation. I'm a big person. I'm big at the notion of teaching the next generation to love each other, spread love, love the earth, take care of each other, and take care of the beautiful earth God gave us. I know that sounds kind of hokey, but that is what I stand for. I love that. And I could, the doctor said that you're not going to have kids, because after everything we do, removing all the organs where the cancer were, I had a female related cancer. And so she's like, you will never be able to naturally have children again. And it's so hard for me to even think about that. But, it's funny how we're having this conversation now. I had cancer back in 2015 is when they diagnosed me, and I'm on my 6-year remission. Praise God,
Amen.
cancer free. And it was this year, the process of detachment takes time.
Yeah.
Don't rush it. It takes time. And after 6 years, I finally came to peace with that. And I finally let it go. And I was like, you know what, God, you've taken me this far. Whether I'm supposed to have naturally or all these kids around the world are my kids.
That's right. That's right. Perspective.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, it's perspective.
But life opened up once again. Life opened up with this cancer. I had a major global organization, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, out of the blue, nominate me for Woman of the Year to help. And that is just an organization that uses fundraising in different fun ways to help others with cancer and create awareness. And they do all kinds of things with this fun campaign. And I named my campaign Share the Love. I'm all about love. I got my red on. This was the color of the organization. I got my red on, girl.
I love it.
So I made that Share the Love, and then We Will Survive Cancer, another local organization. I got all these opportunities to serve. Serving is what I wanted. So God said, okay, we're going to take your cancer. You're going to serve again. So now I'm thrown in the middle of serving cancer patients. I was in orphan care. Wow. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, God, we're going to roll. Sometimes you just got to roll with it. And I started a project at Howard University Hospital here called Lip Gloss Love Project. And when I got out of the hospital, I remember asking my brother for my lip gloss after I got out of surgery. And I remember waking up and I'm like, where's my lip gloss? And he was just looking at me like, what do you think? You're on a runway? You just had cancer surgery. I said, give me my lip gloss.
Yeah.
And it was something so small that made me feel beautiful.
Amen.
Even with no makeup, up in that gown, I felt like I could. I feel like I could go on the New York Fashion Week. But I told Saja and my cousin, your brother-in-law, he came out there. He's just such a sweetheart. He came out there to help Wesley, my brother, wheelchair me out of that hospital, and we got pictures. And I remember looking like a weird but diva with my sunglasses, my lip gloss on, and
your hospital gown.
Well, at that time I changed in some kind of leopard print, God knows, dress.
Of course. Classic Cher, yes.
I needed to be fierce, girl, coming out of that hospital.
That's right.
I remember ripping off all those pain cords because I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out. I said, okay, this is done. Cancer's out. Next.
Look at you.
We need to move on. And so, so I brought that experience, that what was a traumatic experience over and turned it around. Like we said, took that trauma and kind of flipped it around and said, we could do lip gloss for the ladies. And it's been I think this is going on 3 years.
Wow.
That we have provided lip gloss and healthy options. I began to seek healthy options on my journey to fitness again, as far as eating right, learning to tweak my eating. And I listened to, I got a horrible sweet tooth, but I've listened since then to about I would say 1,000 medical lectures, and not only medical body, but spiritual and soul healing. And oh God, life, girl, it takes you to places. It's like roller coaster sometimes, but it takes you to places that will dip you down, but then shoot you straight back up. But the beauty of it is, I take life and my perspective is different now. I know God's got me. And with every dip, I know something, if my heart is open, I got the will, if I have that willingness to be open to life and the world and to the universe, what the universe has to offer, I know around the bend something good is coming. In fact, even if it's good or bad, I look forward to what's coming around the bend. Even I'm sure you know this. Even through the podcast, starting a podcast can be a very scary thing, but look at you. I love that you're doing this. I love that you're creating awareness, and it can be a little scary. You don't know what the outcomes are, or who's listening, or if one person listening or 1 million people are listening, but it's okay. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You change the life of one person. It's like the butterfly effect. You're essentially going to move mountains, even through one person.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, all this nonsense of not being enough, I think it's slowly melting. I'm not there yet, of course. We'll never be there until, the minute you stop growing, you're in the grave, right?
Mm.
You're dead.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing, all that crushing. I think all that crushing is what's continually producing this.
That's right.
Where I'm going, continually producing this and catapulting me into this trajectory.
Yeah.
I would have loved to live a smooth life, I guess, but now when I look back at my life, and like I said, I'm not even halfway done. I feel I got more adventures to come, girl. And I feel like without that crushing, had I not had those experiences, would I be able to have reached so many people? The first time going back to the sexual abuse, the first time I opened up was actually in Zambia to those orphans, because during a sexual health and hygiene clinic, they asked me to last minute do. I realized that these girls, young women, started coming up to me, asking me these strange questions of, will we get blessed? I mean, what is the blessing of having sex with an older man? And these are little kids. I mean, this was something that was going on, and I was just like, what is happening? I was mind blown that these kids, we were supposed to be talking about tampons and periods and, hygiene questions and wearing condoms, if we promote abstinence, but that was supposed to be the topic. But instead, kids were coming up to me saying that these older men and pastors and people were having sexual relations, and they said they'd be blessed. So even that, I got a chance to share my story. I stopped the clinic. I said, hey, we need to stop and let them know that they weren't alone.
Wow.
They weren't alone. And like I said, I would never wish cancer. I would never wish sexual abuse on anyone. But if you've gone through trauma, and if you've gone through things like that, we try to take those things and allow God to use those traumas and those tragedies to help heal, bring healing to another person. What's the ladder? What's the other option?
Exactly.
Curl up, die. Just curl up in a ball and die. I said, use everything in your life, even your traumas, and max out to love, to max those things in your life, those incidences, turn it around to try and love someone else.
I love it, Sherry. Thank you.
But
thank you so much for just sharing. I mean, your life just screams freedom fighter. Seriously, as you're like talking about your childhood, just all that you went through, the abuse, the death of your mom, the abandonment, the cancer, and just how God transformed you, just how he turned it all around for his glory, right?
Amen.
And then you were walking out, you were fulfilling your God-given purpose with these orphans, your charity.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
I mean, it's just so beautiful. You are a true
Not done.
fighter.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I know
And
it's
I'm
God
not
in you.
done yet.
That's- Oh yeah, the best is yet to come. You're just getting started.
I mean, I'm not done until it is time, whether that's tomorrow or whenever the Lord takes me home. I feel like I'm on my way to that untethered soul type of life. It's like, I mean, I'm starting to become more at ease with who I am, with my own, in my own healthy way, being ease with my own soul. I feel that it's important to not only love yourself, have self-compassion, but actually have ease with who you are in your own soul, in your own skin, and that journey, I'm not done yet. I got more adventures coming, and I want to swim with humpback whales. That's coming soon.
All right.
Climb Kilimanjaro. I was supposed to do that in Bora Bora last week, but the whales weren't having it and the pandemic wasn't having it. So, but it's coming. It's coming. I got this, like, oh my God, it's like my drive. Maybe it's me that I'm hyper, but every day that goes by, I've got this high drive, and I think it's because of the freedom.
Yeah.
Because of this freedom of going towards you and who God made you, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Without all the other voices telling you who you need to be.
Right.
It's not easy.
Sherry, let me ask you, how can people find you? How can we connect with Dr. Sher Mathew? Sherry, how can we follow you, ask you questions, or just talk with you?
I kind of, this is crazy. This year, I decided to slow down a little bit on the social media and, be present, but I'm still very active on social media because I love engaging with people. I just love people, and I've always been that way. I love the connection, and I love connection with the outside world, and I'm not a cliquish person, so I don't like being in a bubble, obviously, after all we've talked about. So, I am on Facebook and Instagram still. I am, I gained the nickname here, Sher, out of just accident. So Sher, SHER space Mathew, MATHEW. That is my Facebook name, and it is also my Instagram name. And you can direct message me. You can DM me and Instagram or Facebook me at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you look for me, message me, and I may be slow sometimes at getting back to you, but because during the pandemic, as a pharmacist, of course, we are rolling with these COVID vaccination clinics, and then flu season is here, so pretty crazy. But feel free to message me, write me. I love encouraging, bring you some encouragement, bring you some light, positive energy and light to bring healing to you through my life experience, or jump on board with one of our cancer projects. We'd love to have you.
That's awesome. And I'll put all of that in the show notes down below for anyone who's interested, who wants to connect with you. I'll have all your social media handles down below. So thank you so much, Sherry.
Awesome.
And I would love for you to just fill in the blank with this one last statement. Today, I stand free from.
Oh, wow. From the chains. From the chains of what? The chains of what everyone else wanted me to be, and what everything else wanted me to be. I stand free from all of that. And I am love and life. I am victorious. I'm possibility. I'm more than a conqueror. I replace that with those thoughts that don't serve me, and those thought processes that don't serve me. It's the
Beautiful.
greatest currency I have, the greatest currency I have to give someone else is my true authentic self.
That's right. I love it. Sherry, thank you so much for being here. It was so wonderful just listening to your story again. So beautiful. I mean, God's fingerprints, God is all over your story. And I just can't wait to see all that he's going to do through you. The best has yet to come, dear. Oh my God.
Yes.
Excited for you.
Amen. Thank you for having me. Thank
You're
you. And I hope
welcome.
this moves mountains and changes the lives of many,
Amen.
you know, through the love of this program too.
Thank you. And folks, if you liked this interview, please go ahead and like down below, subscribe to this channel, and definitely share this interview with someone you think will be blessed by it or needs to hear it. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye.
Sherry.